Things are not going to slow down ever. So you've got to build that network who can help ground you, can help educate you, and help you navigate, hopefully successfully, the world and the workplace around you.
Hello and welcome to Management Minutes with Mika and friends. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce my friend and professional colleague, Jason Briefel, who is the former executive director at the Senior Executives Association. I believe that's where we met like decades ago, but also partner and director of government and public affairs at Shaw, Bransford, and Roth. Jason, welcome and thank you for joining me for this quick conversation today.
Oh, thanks so much, Mika, for having me. Glad to be here.
So, Jason, you're often heard around town saying this quote, hopefully the government can save itself from itself before it's too late. And I'd love to invite you just to talk a little bit about what does that mean to you when you talk about that? Love to hear your perspective.
I think that any of us can recognize that the systems, the laws, the rules that have all piled up over time hold people back from bringing their best to the table. And I think that's because we don't intentionally craft, cultivate, and shape that culture. We hide problems until they show up in the Washington Post, and then it's a crazy scene in town. I think about this especially today with a great sense of urgency when proposals like Schedule F and far more radical proposals are being publicly discussed. How do we help managers, leaders, federal employees push toward that better place? And how do we instill that as the core mindset and kind of the mantra of the workforce? Because I think without that, these attacks and these criticisms about public employees will continue.
Yeah, part of it we always say is that, government has a PR problem. But part of that maybe can be addressed through this concept of community that you and I have been talking about. How do you see the federal community at large sort of supporting itself and leaning in, especially to the demographic of managers, because they're burning out at some of the highest levels that we're seeing?
I don't think that there is a community writ large for the whole government, for the whole workforce. I just think it's too big. And, you talk about the Surgeon General's report, the data coming out of Microsoft and the Harvard Business Review about burnout levels of managers and others is really shocking. Human beings are social creatures, and it's really important to go out and find it. And there are so many awesome organizations, many of them very small, bootstrapped, volunteer-led associations and nonprofits for folks to get involved in. And then there's obviously internal within your organizations, ERGs and other kinds of ways to get together. And one of the things that I'm increasingly focused on is how do we connect the dots between those islands of change and those mavericks and leaders out there and push us toward that tipping point where some of these things that we're talking about become more normalized, become more prioritized, because I think that's the only way we raise our boats together as people. But more importantly, how we kind of rise to the criticisms and the challenges that we have so that we can do the big transformation that's really necessary.
I 100% agree with that. If you were speaking to a group of, let's say, like new hires, what would you say to them to inspire them to hang in there, look introspectively at their own resilience and the difference and impact that they can make?
I think it's important to find your purpose and find your tribe. You have a job to do, but that job isn't the edge of the paper. So find yourself in your work and find people who push you, who encourage you, who support you, and never be afraid to ask questions and figuring out who will answer me, who will let me in, who will help me understand how I can succeed here so that we can make this organization succeed, and follow the path. Be like water. Go where it feels good to go. It does take some vulnerability to put yourself out there and to ask those questions and kind of work the network and see who you can learn and grow from. And I think the last thing that I'd add to that is try to make that outreach not focus on kind of homogeneous populations, whether people or professionals that look like you. I focus on kind of people and human capital issues, but I learn a lot from IT people focusing on DevSecOps. There are kind of horizontal lessons that we can learn from one another. And I think that that kind of networked and collaborative team building and personal sense making is really critical for navigating an increasingly volatile and dynamic world. Things are not going to slow down ever. So you've got to build that network who can help ground you, can help educate you, and help you navigate, hopefully successfully, the world and the workplace around you.
So incredibly true. Thank you, Jason, for those inspiring words and tips and just nuggets of advice and wisdom. We really appreciate you being a part of our network and our community. And so thank you on behalf of GovLoop and the team and Management Minutes here. Hope to have you back again. And thank you for tuning in for today's segment and wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for having me.